Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining Joan and I. We are now. My name is Soila. I'm from the divorcemagazine.co.uk. I'm the founder and editor, and I have got loads of videos both on YouTube and on the website www.thedivorcemagazine.co.uk. There's lots of interviews on there all about divorce and coping and dealing with divorce and children and the effects of divorce and so forth. So go and visit and see what you can find on there. Anything that you're looking for, you probably will find it there. This morning, well, it is morning. You might be listening in the afternoon, but we have Joan Bishop, and let Joan tell us what it is that she does. Hi, Joan.
Hi Sola, lovely of you to ask me and to be part of your very important
Oh,
project.
you're most welcome. Thank you.
I am a mediator, family mediator, and have been for 15 years. I have mediated over 1,000 cases.
Wow.
And not only do I mediate, I also train mediators, and they may be from a legal background or they may be from other backgrounds. I'm from another background. My background is mainly in business. I had shops. I also have an education background. I have a education qualification following my degree in sociology. I've also worked as a member of a foster panel, helping to choose foster parents.
Fantastic.
They're very involved with families and they're very important to me. I come from a fractured family, extremely fractured family, from a time when divorce was quite rare, over 50 years ago. This has helped me to really focus upon what is important to me and what would have been important to me had it been available to my family. Apart from being qualified as a mediator and able to do legally funded work, I also have a master's degree from the University of London in mediation, and I'm also an NLP practitioner.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
that's
for
brilliant.
me, where I'm coming from is the need to deal with emotions in mediation for families, which
Yes.
I really hoped or wished could have happened to my family, but it didn't.
Yeah, and I have to say, recently, I have met a few adults, children of divorce,
Mm.
and it's amazing that they have the same story to tell in the sense that they still remember their parents' divorces, although it happened a long time ago, and the effects that divorce had on them. And one of the reasons that I set up the divorcemagazine.co.uk was the bottom line for me, coming from a child therapy background, was to make sure the children are all right. Um, because by arming the parents with good information on the effects of divorce on children, um, you hope that they will make better choices and more informed decisions about what is going to work for their children and how they can help their children cope with the situation.
Quite right.
Yeah.
I'm qualified to work with children in
You,
mediation. I've
the
met over
direct,
children, yes,
yeah,
heard amazing stories from them, and have really been able to associate with many of the things that they have said.
all right, okay.
Generally, they're very supportive of their parents. I think parents are sometimes concerned about what children will say. What I would say, my probably worst experience was having to give evidence that my parents divorced in front of three magistrates.
Wow,
And that was abusive as far as I was concerned.
wow.
I
How
was
old were
13
you?
years old, and those days they had fault and blame, and my parents had to fight to prove who was right and who was wrong, and I was really stuck in the middle.
Wow.
Fortunately, that would not happen these
No,
days.
no,
So
no. So there are
they
things that
just
are,
did,
so
yes.
yeah, there are things that
But
have changed.
yes, and there are safe environments now for children to be able to express their opinions,
Yeah.
do it in a confidential way, so they're choosing what they wish their parents to hear.
Okay.
It's one of the better parts of my work, I think,
Yes.
helping children express themselves and reassuring parents that their children will be all right if they're all right.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And that's what I say. Also, your children will be all right if you're all right, and you will be all right if your children are all right. It will just, kind of. It's a lot of work, and divorce is a journey, and it can be a painful journey at that. And we'll look at the conflicts, like you mentioned. So, Joan, tell us what we're going to speak about today. I'm quite excited, actually.
Okay, well, when I first started my work, I really was from a business background and found it quite difficult to think, how do I manage people's emotions? And I guess when people come and see me, they wonder that for themselves. So, over a period of time, and with my research, I've developed a way of helping people to express those feelings. The purpose of it really is to create a business like environment. I think it's important to say that I don't only deal with divorcing couples. I deal with couples where a child has arrived after a very short relationship, or maybe no relationship at all. So many people, maybe the majority, are not married, have no intention to marry, or may have lived together for a while. So they all come from different places. But I guess the overriding feeling that they have when they meet me is fear. They're frightened, and fear brings a feeling of defensiveness. And also, I think that they have to tell me that the other person was wrong. And as a mediator, what I do know is there's no right and wrong of this situation. What we're dealing with is the here and now, and how important it is as a mediator to understand and help people to express how they feel, to get out those emotions, so that they can go on and do the business of either sorting out money or children, whatever they feel are important issues. So it's not a matter of proving you're right or wrong. It's a matter of saying, let's do business here. We need to do business, and we need to be able to do it in a business-like way. You wouldn't go to your bank manager and become really emotional, because you wouldn't get what you want from your bank manager.
You can shed all the tears you like.
So I have developed a process which acknowledges that there are emotions involved in not being with somebody that you cared for or that you have a child by. So would you like me to explain that process?
Yeah, and I think it's
other questions.
I think it's also important to talk about the part, I called it saying goodbye. And you had a much better way of putting it, Joan, didn't you?
Well, I don't know. I think this comes from my foster panel work. Because I worked with some very wonderful people when I was doing that. And obviously we know that children in foster homes don't stay there. They move on, sometimes for good reasons, sometimes for bad. But they would talk about the importance of a good goodbye. And for foster children, it may be a goodbye, but it's about proper endings. Most people who separate from another person don't have the opportunity, or the mental state maybe, to make a good goodbye or a new beginning. And for me, these are new beginnings.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
so you referred to them to, like, if you're talking in this context about divorce and separation, where it's a positive ending. And do you have a process to actually get that positive ending, and what's important about getting that positive ending?
The importance is creating an atmosphere in which people can talk and not think that it's important about truth, about allocating blame, or about getting their own back, or negative emotions. It's about new beginnings, positive new beginnings, because wherever people go, if they're not going to have a relationship, particularly anymore because they don't have children, they will need to learn from the relationship that they've left. If they are going to go on to continue parenting, as many people do, it's helpful to establish a new way of communicating and a way of saying that was the past and this is the future. And we acknowledge the pain and difficulty of the past, but we cooperated really well before. We loved each other, we worked together, we have those skills, we just need to find them again. So it's finding them again. So going back to creating a positive relationship that will help families and themselves move on.
So you're saying, so you have the ending bit, where it's ended. Is there a process where you encourage, like maybe a ritual where you encourage them, what you encourage them to do to actually attain that positive ending before going into their new chapter? Or, I mean, they overlap somewhere, but...
Well, for me, in mediation, it's right at the beginning of mediation, talking about why their relationship is over and what they understand from that and what they bring to it. Okay, so I've developed questions really based upon future focus therapy and narrative mediation. I didn't understand when I started to do this where all this came from, but when I did my master's, I analysed where it came from, and I was quite interested in the influences that had come in to create this theory, which in some ways protected me as a mediator, but actually was really useful because it was structured. People didn't come into the room to have a row. They came in to have a controlled conversation, and by talking about things they really know about, which is about their relationship, they become settled and able to talk about all things that they feel they need to. And you can decrease their anxiety really, and show that as a mediator, I don't have a side to take. I'm there to solve a problem with them. They're going to solve the problem, and I'm going to see what the tools they have to do it. And in doing that, we talk about familiar things, the
Yes.
things they both know about.
That's really interesting, Joan, and I'd like us to go into those questions that you ask and how you because what you said right there, that in mediation, right at the beginning of mediation is where you start the process of saying goodbye, and actually mediation is that place to say goodbye, but a lot of people don't see it that way. They say it as it's a place to sort out the issues that are outstanding, financial and child contact issues, but not actually looking at it. We're doing this because we're saying goodbye to this part as we travel to the next. So when we come back to part 2 of the video of the interview, then maybe we can go, if you don't mind, we can go into the questions that you actually do explore with them.
That'll be fun.
Okay. So now we are in part 2 of my interview with Joan Bishop, who's a family mediator, and you've had quite a bit of a background, business, and also with fostering. You've been on a fostering panel.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah, and now you're a family mediator, and just in case I didn't mention it, I'm Soila, not to you, but to the people who are listening. I'm Soila. I'm the founder and editor of the divorcemagazine.co.uk. Joan, in the last interview, the part 1 interview, you had just started talking about the part where family couples come to you, and right in the beginning of mediation, that's when you start the process of actually saying goodbye to what they knew, and then they can start this new chapter, because that's what divorce is. It is a new chapter, and you were talking about the questions that you use in this process.
Okay, now people watching this might find this a useful exercise to do for themselves.
Yeah.
But the interesting fact when I'm working with people is that I give them a choice as to whether they'll answer the questions, because mediation is voluntary, so participating in it is voluntary as well. But I explain the questions first so that they can hear them. And obviously, as I'm saying these questions in their heads, they're going through the answers. So they know exactly what they think, but they don't know what the other person has to say. So my preamble, first of all, is to say that for me, there is no such thing as truth. And people often come to mediation or come to any professional to try and show that they are right and the other person is wrong. Well, my belief is there is no right or wrong. They're just different. People have different perspectives. And in order to illustrate that, what I would say is that wherever you're sitting, imagine yourself sitting on the other side of the room, and describing what is behind you. Now for me, on this link, you can see that there's a picture. In front of me, there's a door. If I was to ask a person to describe what was in the room who's in front of me, they would say it was a picture, and I would say there was a door. We're not seeing the same things, and we go away and describe the room. Someone else hearing that could say that Joan's not telling the truth. There was a picture in that room. But in actual fact, everybody's telling the truth. It's a matter of what you see, your different experiences and perspective at the time.
Of the same room.
It's happening, yes, of the room and of your life. So when I'm talking to people, I tell them I'm not seeking for a truth. What I want to hear is their particular truth. So it's not a picture as your lovely defined picture behind you. I've got an abstract picture behind me, and I'm expecting a sort of an abstract rather than a defined picture, something a bit hazy.
Yeah.
So they're not there to convince me that they are right, just to say what it was like for them. And people find that a very easy idea to understand.
Yes.
So then I will go on to explain that I'm not going to make them answer these questions because mediation is voluntary. So when I tell them what the questions are, they can choose not to answer them. If one person says they won't, then the other person won't. So it's a very safe place. One person's not going to reveal a lot and the other one take advantage of that or walk away from that.
Yeah.
So creating an equal environment. If they don't want to do it, that's fine. But I do also say if your mediation becomes difficult, maybe we'll need to go back and do this at some other time. So you're free to do it if you wish or if you don't. Amazingly, 95% of people are really happy to do it.
Yeah.
Those who do it, I would say 99% would say that was a very useful thing to do, although they're frightened to start with. And I understand that fear because you would say, well, I didn't come here to talk about my emotions. I came here to sort out my problems.
Yeah.
But actually, my belief is that when families separate or couples separate, it's not a legal problem, it's a family problem or a couple problem. Making it legal is creating something that wasn't there before. Sometimes you do have to have recourse to law, but actually within yourself, you have the abilities. Most people, I would imagine, who come to mediation have those abilities to sort things out themselves. They just need to be able to sweep the floor clean and move on in a business-like way. So this is about creating a business-like environment. It's once, it's never done again, but it helps them.
That's it.
So, shall I tell you the questions now?
Yes, please. Yes.
Okay. So the first thing about them is that they're very difficult to answer and very difficult sometimes to listen to the answers. So it's better that people don't interrupt each other, and that when the first person has spoken, when the second person speaks, they don't refer to what the other person has said, because it's about their personal truth. It's about saying the other person was wrong. So the questions are told in a story form. So I'm going to tell you some stories. Okay. So I would say that I know there's a lever and a left here, and that must in a way be the case, although people may in the end have come to a decision that yes, they wish to leave. There was somebody who made that decision in the first place. Yeah. So what I am saying is I'm wondering who decided this relationship was over and what it was that exactly told them the relationship was over. It may have been that your relationship has been rocky for a long time. Maybe you've separated, got back together. But for one of you, something in particular has happened to make you know that this time the relationship is over. So if you could say exactly what that is. That's for one person. For the other person, I tell them I'm going to give one of my special offers of the day, because the weather is beautiful today. Well, it's not so beautiful outside here, but it's a beautiful day. So I've got a very special offer for them. And what I'm going to do is offer to chop off one of their arms. Now, for me, it doesn't really matter which one. It could be their right or left arm. I'm not awfully good at chopping off arms. I could try to give them an anaesthetic. I'm not sure that I could, but I'll have a go. And I have a chopper and I have a saw. I can just pull it off like a chicken. So we have this idea of something quite painful. And then I say, if I were to say that to you and you thought, as I am saying it to you, if you thought I was serious and I closed my eyes, I guess you'd leave the room. And also, if I leant forward to grab your arm, you would pull it away. Yeah? So what does this mean? So the reason for saying that is, for one of the people, and possibly both people in this room, they have experienced pain which is worse than having your arm chopped off. And had I got the opportunity, which I don't want, to chop someone's arm off, they'd go to hospital and they would receive painkillers and there'd be a new prosthetic arm. So everything could be sorted in a couple of weeks. For someone who has lost someone that they love, the pain is worse and there is nothing to remove that pain. There isn't a new partner and there isn't a painkiller. That will go on, and research has shown that they'll last for about 2 years. So it's important that we acknowledge that someone in this room has been, and it may be both of you in fact, experienced that pain. So if you could speak a little bit about that. So that's the first question. The second question is to do with the emotion involved with what is happening here. And at this point, generally, I don't know who's the lever and the left, because that wouldn't be information that I would have sought. So I say to them, I'm going to give you a ball each. One is a football and one is a rugby ball. So you can imagine the shape of these balls. Now, for the person who decided the relationship was over, I want them to imagine that this is the tip of the rugby ball. And at that point, they started to feel a slight dissatisfaction with the other person, which gradually grew as a rugby ball grows and changes. So it moves from dissatisfaction to irritation, sometimes, then more frequently. And as this rugby ball grows to the centre of it, they're lying awake in bed at night, wondering and worrying about what the effect would be if they were to leave the person. So they anticipate the future, the effect on friends, families, children, any other related people, their finances, and they don't share it. So the person lying next to them is blissfully unaware, maybe fast asleep, and these thoughts are going on. And that may go on for a period of time. And then these thoughts become all-consuming. And this is when we get to the widest part of the rugby ball. And at that point, they may pluck up the courage to say to the other person that they wish the relationship to be over, or they do something which indicates that it's over. So at this point, all becomes open knowledge. So they're passing that information across to the other person. And for them, now that that is out, they start this downward journey on the rugby ball. Relief. I'm relieved, I've thought about my past, my future, when I was lying in bed, and I have something planned. So they know where they're going. So their emotional state changes, maybe from a great deal of fear more to anticipation and sometimes optimism. So they move on their journey down the rugby ball. Now the football, you can imagine what this does. This is something that you give to the person who's been left. And this doesn't apply to all, because some may suspect, but even I think couples that suspect, it becomes a shock when it actually materialises. So I describe this as a kick from, I don't know who's current now. I was just say Beckham. I don't
Don't ask me.
Beckham's a tennis player. No, let's say Wayne Rooney. Wayne Rooney, a goal kick.
I think he still plays.
So you receive that to the centre of your stomach. Now, some people have said to me it passes through them. Others say they turn to stone. Others that they go spinning. But they get a massive rush of emotion, which I'm sure your people who are listening will know what I'm talking about. It's indescribable, and I can't describe it. It would be ingenuous of me to say that I could. But I guess the first thing is shock, then fear, then anger. Big thing I think that people will recognise, although not necessarily have acknowledged in the past, is the massive drop in self-esteem that people have. If somebody, this person who knows me well, can't love me anymore, then there's something really wrong with me. So I'm now diminished. I'm very small and I'm not important. And I'm as low as I can be. So we have one person who is just stunned and having the reaction they're having, and the other person journeying in the way. So at that point, they may feel it's a mutual point, but actually they're very separate.
Yes.
Understanding
one is a few steps ahead, always.
Miles, because this has gone weeks, months, years, so it can be a long way. They sometimes will have found somewhere else to live. So the difference can be huge. So from a state of security, everything is drawn away from you. So that's the story that I've told. The question associated with it is, do you associate with either of those scenarios? And most people will own sometimes one, sometimes both, because they're going through the feelings that they've had. They can see it, they can recognise it. So the question associated with it, to help us move on, is what emotions do you bring to this room now? Because the emotions that you bring, you actually have to put in a suitcase beside you, because we're here to do business. If you cannot recognise those emotions, then you can't know how to control them. But at the same time, of course, they will surface. This is a very difficult place to be. But if you can acknowledge what they are, then you will be able to be businesslike. But if you have no idea what those emotions are, they can take control of you.
I guess because also acknowledging what those emotions are, then if they begin to resurface, you can recognize them and realize, oh, okay, I'm getting angry now and I'm going to say something that's not going to be conducive to this whole environment, so I better just... So bringing them out and putting them on the table and putting them away, I think it's actually a pretty good thing to do in mediation. I wish solicitors, could use it as well.
But I think the other thing that maybe sometimes I forget to mention is if I went to pull your arm off, you drag it away.
Yes.
If you're in this state of extreme pain, you actually don't want to lose the other person.
Yes.
You can consciously hang on to them. That's how you hear about divorces going on for years and years and years, because one person cannot let go. And it's really important to be able to acknowledge that you have let go. And if you haven't let go, to acknowledge that too, that a time must come when you do.
But sometimes people will say, oh, no, I'm so done with him. I'm gone. I'm done, And in reality, that's not what we're seeing.
No, but
Maybe they don't know that they are not letting go.
But when we work as professionals, as we do, what we know is what we do in the room is only maybe 10% of it, because they go back to this bed that they lay in, wondering and worrying, and consider what's been said. And it's helpful, I think, to understand that there is a reason that somebody acknowledges for you, makes it normal, that people don't want to lose someone that they love. Just because someone doesn't love you today, when you thought they did,
And it's okay to feel
you can hang on to them, and you have to move through that process yourself at your own time, and that's why readiness for mediation is really important.
Okay, we'll come back, Joan, to part 3 with that topic, readiness for mediation, and what that looks like.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. So here we are. I'm with Joan Bishop, and Joan, do you want to tell us what organization you're from? Family Partnership?
Yes, of course. I'm from Family and Partner Mediation, and I work in Kent and London.
Okay, and Joan is a family mediator, and I'm Soila from the divorcemagazine.co.uk, and this is our third part of an interview all around family mediation and a process that Joan uses to actually get the couple in the mediation room, whether it's a couple or, like you said, sometimes it can be other relations, to end where they are, to welcome the new side or the new life that they're now going to be getting into after the mediation is over and after the divorce is over. And Joan, you've mentioned this process and you've given us a super analogy about how to look at it and how to deal with it that you use with your clients. And you mentioned 3 questions. We've looked at 2. Can you remind us what the 2 are, and then we'll look at question 3.
Okay, so the first question was how the couple knew that relationship was over.
Yes.
And the associated pain for the person who's been left.
Yeah.
So feels like the person that's been left. The second one was about the emotions associated with being in the situation that they're in, and I described a football and a rugby ball. And I think it's important to say that these emotions that I'm asking them to look at are not just about themselves, but about the other person, because then I want them to put them in a suitcase beside them so that they can move on to being businesslike. But of course, emotions will arise, and that's a natural part of the process. The third question is optimistic, because we have to be optimistic. I think we are moving on. So I take them on holiday with me, and I take them to Austria, usually, to the mountains. And I say that when they were together, they lived in the mountains and in a beautiful chalet in the woods. On a summer's day, they had their first child. And I asked them whether they were both there at the birth of the child. And then if there is a child, then we'll talk about how important that is when you have your first child, the wonderful experience. There's nothing to compare with it, and the way that you feel so unified. And then I say that sadly something's happened that means you can't live in this particular place anymore. So you have 2 valleys that you need to travel to. So one to the left and one to the right, north and south. And in those valleys, each of them will have a new chalet, which is equally beautiful. And in the future, they will visit each other's chalets. And one side, one will go to visit, so they'll go up and down the mountains to the other side. And the children will be playing in the garden. So maybe a little boy riding his bike, a little girl making a daisy chain, so we can see them there in this lovely sunny day. And they look up, and it's their mum coming to see them. And they say to their daddy, "Daddy, it's mummy, it's mummy." And they run to the gate, and daddy holds their hand and takes them there. Mummy comes to the gate, and she's welcomed in for a cup of tea or glass of wine, whatever they feel is right. They sit down at a table, and the children come and sit on their knees and look up at their faces and are smiling because they're talking to each other. They talk about what's been happening whilst the family's been, or the children have been with dad. And then dad takes their hand and mum takes the other child's hand, and they go to the gate and they walk up and down the mountain back to the other side. A while later, dad does this same journey but the other way. And the children are in the garden again, having a tea party. And there's a paddling pool. So one's in the paddling pool, one's playing with the tea set. They look up and they see their daddy and they say, "Mummy, it's daddy. Daddy's coming." And mummy smiles. They walk to the gate, take mummy and daddy's hands, sit down, and they join the tea party. And they're all smiling together and talking about what's happened, what will happen. And then obviously the daddy leaves and goes on his journey. So I say to them, "Do you think I'm mad describing that for you? Do you think you can achieve that? Because it's within your hands to create that place, and your children would love it. So can you tell me, when you look at this mountain on a scale of 1 to 10, what does it look like? And how far are you up that? Because that will tell you how you will find this process." And then I ask them what the path looks like. And they can describe the path, because the path will tell you what the journey feels like it will be. Some people say they can't see a path. Occasionally I have people say they got to a crossroads and they need the other person to help them up that path. Others say they go up it and they slide down. Some cannot see the path and we say they're still under the bed, there to look out to the future. So that description actually tells each other where they are. And if one is saying, I'm in that valley, I'm already there, and the other person saying I'm under the bed, then they're in very different places. So we were saying that we were going to talk about when you know something is ready to be mediated.
Yes, yeah. So that gives you an idea.
Of course. And then, because if somebody's moved on and is really happy and the other person isn't in that place and needs help to be in that place, they might need some sort of therapy, they just might need time. Because we can see people as mediators, sometimes they've been separated 5 years, sometimes 3 days, a week, 2 weeks.
Okay, wow.
So you're seeing them sometimes very quickly, sometimes after a long period of time. And so readiness for mediation is really important. And as a mediator, you have to feel that this couple can work together. And if they can't now, what would need to happen to let them do that, to encourage them? Because what we don't do as mediators is set people up to fail. They're already in a place where they maybe feel that they have failed. And my work, I feel, should be quick. I don't think people should come and see me for months and months and months. They're in pain and they want to get rid of that pain as soon as they can. And they want it to be efficient and businesslike. So everything has to be right for that. And a mediator will say, well, maybe this isn't the moment, and then discuss what would need to happen. So that's the purpose of the questions. So when I've asked the questions, people will answer. Lots of lovely things are said.
Do they answer, do they write it down, or do they answer verbally?
Verbally, and I just say to them, who would like to start?
All right.
It's sometimes better if the leaver says, because they have answers to the questions. So I think for many people who are the left, they do not understand what they did. They're just shocked. What did I do? And if somebody can talk to them about maybe what they feel they did, it helps them to understand and maybe opens their mind and heart to be able to talk. So usually the leaver begins and they don't interrupt each other and they answer all of the questions. And I feed back as they're going through. And then I ask the other person not to refer to what was said, but then to talk about themselves. Absolutely.
And if a couple was prepared, because that tells you whether they're ready for mediation or not. If a couple they've decided, like I had a client call yesterday who wants to get into mediation, what would you advise them to do so that the mediation process can be not only shorter but actually successful? What preparations can they make?
Okay, well, the initial preparation is this, talking about it, getting rid of the emotions, identifying them. And then I would say preparing your mind to be open. I don't think you have to do any particular work, because if you feel that you have the answers and if you want to come for the answer and have it in 10 seconds, actually you're really underestimating the work that's needed. If it was that easy, you'd have sorted it out. What you have to do then is to put your trust in the mediator, to know what they are doing and to be able to guide you through the process, to be patient and to follow the process, and to be willing to ask questions. But actually a mediator's job is to ask questions of people, not to give opinions. So I'm always asking questions. So to be ready to answer those questions in a respectful way, to honour the relationship that they had, and to communicate and cooperate as far as they can. But a good mediator will create that environment for you, because we know it's incredibly difficult, and most people who come to me are very, very frightened. And acknowledging that is very important, and that they will be safe. They're going to be safe. I can create a safe environment for them, and that they have had really positive relationships in the past. So why can't they have those now?
Okay. Joan, thank you so very much. Thank you very much. If anybody wanted to contact you, how can they go about it? Where can they find you?
Well, the best place really is to go to my website, which is www.familypartner, mediation.co.uk.
Okay. All right. And you'll be there.
To hear from them, yes, and I'm very happy to see them at any time. And I think important to add that I have a team of mediators with me, and for me, cultural awareness is really important.
Yes.
So I have a mediator who speaks Portuguese and one who speaks Greek,
Right.
and they are their mother tongues.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then obviously those of us who speak English, but there are mediators who want to join me who are able to provide mediation in another language.
Okay.
Because culture is not about just language, it's about what goes on in your family. And I think
Exactly.
hard time, you want somebody who can speak your language and can understand your culture.
Okay.
So
Oh, thank you so much, Joan. That was brilliant.
listeners will be pleased with that. And I wish them all the very best in their
Thank you.
journeys. And to you too. Thank you for asking me to join you so
Oh,
long.
thank you for being here, Joan. Thank you.